Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of WWD. I believe this is now episode 7/8, depending on if you want to count the part twos as different episodes or not. Anyway, let's get right on into it. Um, Kicking things off on the fantasy football side of things, I had Daniel Jones, who went out there and looked like a mix of Tom Brady and Brett Favre while having the scrambling ability of Lamar Jackson, and everybody lived happily ever after. Um, Then after that, I had Jason Pinnock, who is my new defensive back. He did okay. He had 8 points, 3 tackles, solo, 2 assists. There were a lot of times he was on a tackle where I think Yahoo didn't credit him with anything. Maybe he gets a stat adjustments, maybe he doesn't. Either way, I'm not too concerned moving on for further weeks. I think he actually looked pretty good out there. Mosto started, I don't know, a fucking villager from Minecraft. I don't know who this dude is, but he obviously didn't play, he didn't do shit. Um, And then Mostop had another guy on his bench that wasn't even playing. I picked up free agent Micah McFadden mid game. He's looking amazing as a linebacker out there. Week 2, he did still 5 total tackles though, but getting 10, 11 tackles, he's looking really good. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of him so far. But overall, it's in the red for me. But damn, my percent dropped by 3%, even though I had Tom Brady. Oh well. Um, we'll ignore that. Anyway, moving on to pussy and big yawners. Now we'll start out with big yawners who had Darren Waller, who, even though he had Tom Brady slash Patrick Mahomes slash Brett Favre out there throwing to him, with the Lamar Jackson capabilities, of course, um, he only had 3 catches for 20 yards on 7 targets. This guy's just a terrible tight end, honestly. No, I'm joking. He's not a terrible tight end. There was a catch that looked or a throw that looked easily catchable that could have gotten him a few more fantasy points, but he dropped it. To be fair, but overall, it was a bad matchup, tough defense. He wasn't able to get too much going. I wouldn't panic on him yet. Like if he plays easier defenses, like say the Cardinals, you'll see him with 13.6. Dallas's defense, I think, is better than San Fran, but not against tight ends. San Fran's really good against the tight ends. Overall, it's just a bad matchup, but it puts Darth in the red a little bit. And then Darth actually had the Demondre Lenore picked up. That's 5 total tackles if you count the assist. Overall, it's a solid game. Almost hit his projection. Nothing crazy though. Nick Bosa finally had a glass of wake the fuck up where he had a sack on a white guy. You wouldn't believe it. Um, but overall, yeah, he didn't really do too much in terms of the tackles. Just a sack. Uh, Overall, nothing really too crazy. He did what you'd expect Nick Bosa to do for once. You'd hope for a bit more though. And then Darth had a player drop 10 points from what he was projected, and he had Fred Warner have his first bad game of the season, and this is because the Giants did not run the ball. They didn't feel like it today. Having Brett Favre slash Patrick Mahomes with Lamar Jackson capabilities at the scrambling game, of course, on top. They just didn't run the ball. They didn't need to. They were dominating the 49ers defense just so hard. Um, and yeah, Fred Warner just didn't get a chance to make many tackles on the running backs or anything like that. Normally he would. I wouldn't panic, but overall it's not good for your matchup this week specifically. Overall, Tax walking away with this one pretty happy where he's only about 2 points in the red, while Darth is probably a good 15. And then we're going to ignore what I said about the run game. I'm joking. Yeah, they didn't do shit in the run game. Joke's on you, haha. The 12 points didn't come from the rush. They came from the touchdown he got and then the 3 catches he got for the most part. That was about 9 out of his almost 13 points. He would have barely had anything in terms of just the run. Overall, I'm not a fan of Burrito. Like I said, he got lucky with that touchdown. Um, and then moving on from that game, from those two guys, moving on to Rick Tatership and Evan. Evan actually started Javon Hargrave, which he got a sack, went in there and did his thing, which beat the projections overall, but he is very sack reliant, like I've been warning you. But overall, he got the sack, so he had a good week. And then that's all they had. Then we'll look at MILF and Toxic Zenpai. MILF predicted the fucking future where the 49ers were going to get bullied so hard they'd bench Christian McCaffrey and send Elijah Mitchell in there. So Elijah Mitchell actually got some runs. He got 42 yards, a few catches. You're not going to see this too consistently, but it is still eating away at McCaffrey. in his run game, which they might start to do a little bit more, but I don't think they're going to do it too much. Overall, with balls of steel, Milf started him, and he went 4 points in the green, but still not really what you'd want as a starting running back. And Toxic, I predicted the George Kittle blow up game in the chat earlier, and I'd say that's a pretty damn good game. 7 catches for 90 yards. He was about to get a touchdown, but the defensive player actually was holding him, so he couldn't get the catch. As for if the catch was catchable anyway, that's a different debate, but either way, there was a flag called on him. It was a potential touchdown, so that's another good 7 to like 10 points he could have had. Overall, very good night for him. And then I think that's all you two had. Yep. Next up, moving on to Karen's husband and Mr. Steeler Girl. Mr. Steeler Girl had Brock Purdy, who went out there and looked solid overall. He won a few points in the green. He's proving to be a startable quarterback in fantasy for the most part, except for when he's playing against these tougher defenses, except for the Rams. That was just him getting fucked over by not getting touchdowns. But week one, he kind of had the Dak Prescott treatment of where they were beating the team so bad they didn't really need to use him, so he didn't get the points. But overall, when he's playing, he should be a startable quarterback. I would have no concerns here. What I would have a concern with, though, Talanoa Hufanga, I have him in a few leagues, as you'll see right here. But that is very concerning when your player has a total of a tackle solo. You cannot rely on interceptions to be a driving stat to carry your safety core or any of your defensive players. I mean, the interception's great, woohoo, but one tackle solo on the game, dude is doing jack shit. I would be very worried about that, but I have been big on him. I've been saying he's basically the next Troy Polamalu, but yeah, that's not a good sign. While Karen's husband had Leonard Williams, who a few years ago was actually one of the most consistent guys in terms of fantasy. He fell off about last year or so to the end of the year before that, where he just started playing like dog shit. I would say ever since it's when they got Dexter Lawrence, where he really started to fall off. But tonight he got a solid amount of tackles and then a half sack, so he actually went into the green, did pretty good. Isaiah Simmons has been a disappointment all year. Tonight was no different, but at least he got 6 points. Look, he's slowly moving up. Maybe by the week he plays Buffalo, he'll be up to like 10 points. He's improving a little bit each week. He's getting better, okay? He's developing like it's Madden. But overall, he's still in the red, not what you'd hope to see. You can probably find a lot of better linebackers out there. If you really feel like starting Simmons, I'd put him in at your DB spot and find another linebacker if I were you, Karen. But overall, in terms of this matchup, I would say Karen's got to be happy walking away with this Thursday night just because of Leonard Williams putting him in the green while Steeler Girl gets fucked over by Hufanga. And then that's all they had. Then Booty and PMC Wagner decided to play half their teams in Thursday Night Football. Not really, but anyway, Deebo Samuel proved to be a very effective fantasy football player when Brandon Ayuk isn't stealing his targets, just like George Kittle. So he went out there, 30 points on the board, 6 catches, 129 yards, a touchdown. He did very good around the board. Don't expect a 30-point game out of Deebo Samuel every week if you're Booty Basher. This is just because Brandon Ayuk is here. I would not rely on him to be putting up those amount of points every week, but overall, that is a lot of points. And Booty, if I were you, I'd probably try to sell him high. And then McCaffrey went in there and did McCaffrey things, where he got a good 22 points. He didn't do anything like crazy where he had like 60 points or anything like that, but you can never complain about 22.9 points. He's doing what you drafted him for. He's doing pretty damn good. And then you go to San Fran's defense, who just got bullied by Daniel Jones the whole night, and they just cried themselves to sleep because they're not nearly as good as Dallas. And yeah, it was just really bad watching them get dominated by Daniel Jones. It made me want to cry, to be honest. And then you had Dre Greenlaw, who had 4 tackles solo and an assist, which is okay. It's nothing special. He underperformed his projections and all that stuff, but it wasn't because he was doing bad. It was just because the Giants weren't really running the ball. And then Okrike had a very good start to the night, but he kind of fell off as we went on to the night. He almost killed Deebo Samuel, which was pretty funny. But other than that, he didn't really do too much. Well, he didn't do too much in the second half, to say the least. It is worth mentioning whenever I say people didn't do much in the second half that within like 5 minutes left of the fourth quarter, the Giants started benching all their players because the 49ers were just getting bullied so bad. But overall, yeah, overall, yeah, it's not really going to matter too much. Those 5 minutes might have gotten him another tackle or something like that. But overall, a solid game. But it is a little concerning how he just kind of dipped on the second half. And then Booty Basher over here with his legendary kicker core had Jake Moody on the bench, who again goes in there, gets a few field goals, few extra points. He's been doing really good, honestly. I'm considering in the next start bench video recommending you bench Harrison Butker and start Jake Moody, just because it seems like he's getting to be one of the more consistent kickers out there. But Booty Basher's walking away looking pretty happy with that one. Now let's get to the game where the Giants just utterly dominated this 49ers team. Like, look, Christian McCaffrey looks like he's ready to cry in that picture. Anyway, Daniel Jones went out there, looked like Jesus Christ himself. You know, he was just bullying everybody. And then Tyrod Taylor went in there and he's like, "Look, I'm going to do it too." And then he proceeded to get bullied. You know, not everybody can be like Daniel Jones, and that's okay. But anyway, Matt Breida, the whole running game just wasn't there, except for Daniel Jones, of course, who ran for on 2 attempts, he ran for 597 yards. I can't even take this shit seriously. He ran for 597 yards and a first down. You know, he did very good. But anyway, they also, in terms of the receiving core, the only thing really worth mentioning here is probably Paris Campbell, who had 6 catches, which is solid. But other than that, yeah, I really wouldn't say much good about this receiving core, and I wouldn't even say to rely on Paris Campbell. It's just something worth mentioning. Yeah, even with Brett Favre himself, they couldn't get it done. Horrible receiving core. In terms of the defense, O'Creaky and Micah McFadden both looked really good with the tackling. Um, they're both tackle machines from what I've been noticing. Uh, Overall, Micah McFadden might be the better one to have, depending on how things keep playing out. But overall, through the first 3 games of the season, he's definitely looking like the main tackler out of the two. Um, Xavier McKinney had a solid game with a good 7 total tackles. Um, Dexter Lawrence, after Cree drops him, decides to actually do good. You know, that's kind of how fantasy is. And then Kayvon Thibodeau had a sack as well, but in terms of fantasy, Kayvon Thibodeau isn't really that good because he's considered a linebacker. Um, then there isn't really much worth mentioning in terms of anything. Gano had a few field goals. He had a good 57-yarder. I don't know if this is really worth mentioning for fantasy, but the punter for the Giants actually was doing really good. He was kicking like 60-yard punts out there, which, if you don't know, is really fucking good for a punter. So yeah, that's something good you could say. And then moving on to this 49ers team, Brock Purdy, he did pretty good. He did what he had to. Didn't do anything special. Didn't do anything flashy. Threw for 300 yards, which is pretty good. But they pretty much were just using him to throw short balls, except for one pass, which was really good to Deebo Samuel deep in the end zone. I think it was I don't remember exactly how far it was. I think it was like 40 yards where they hit Deebo for a touchdown. There was actually 2 that I'm thinking of. 2 big plays. One to Deebo for 40-yard gain, and then another one for a big touchdown. So there was 2 deep shots they took, and it was pretty good each time. McCaffrey went out there, did McCaffrey things, obviously. Elijah Mitchell was starting to eat away at his workload, which is a little concerning, but that's probably only going to happen when the Niners are winning by, well, fucking 18 points. But let's be honest here. Daniel Jones had him right where he wanted him. Other than that, there isn't really much worth mentioning here. The receiving core, what we learned tonight is how crazy much, or is how much Brandon Ayuk not being there helps everybody else but him. Other than that, there isn't really much worth mentioning because I don't think Debo is going to put up that stat line every week. George Kittle's not going to put up that stat line every week. If you have either of those players, I'd recommend trying to trade them for a high value if you can. McCaffrey, hang on to him because obviously he's one of the best players in the league. Yeah. Then in terms of the defense, it allowed 3,005 yards to Daniel Jones and 97 points. Yeah, overall, Drake Greenlaw was actually their top tackler, which is surprising. There wasn't really any one guy that stood out in terms of the tackles here. Hufanga had the pick, which is worth mentioning, but overall he didn't have a good game. I'm also noticing that he had 2 tackles solo here compared to 0 assists. So yeah, he's probably going to be making a few stat adjustments when it comes to these. Um, yeah, overall there really isn't much worth mentioning here. Hargrave had the sack. Nick Bosa had a sack, but pretty much we already talked about that in the defensive side of things. Jake Moody did really good with the field goal kicks. Um, yeah, in terms of the 49ers defense, there really wasn't much worth mentioning. Their defense did about as good as you'd expect them to do, but in terms of the IDP part of it, individual defensive players, yeah, there really wasn't much worth mentioning. I don't think any of the players have to be concerned about anything just because the Giants didn't run. Because as again, Daniel Jones is pretty much Brett Favre himself. You're not gonna believe it when I tell you, you know. But overall, yeah, that's what went down. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys for the next video.